Welcome back to episode number 2 in this free and amazing course. Today's lesson is all about strings, and here's an overview of exactly what we'll be talking about. We have comments, string output, concatenation, operators and operands, expressions, and statements. And just a reminder of who I am, my name is Tim, and this course is brought to you by CompSciCentral.com, the #1 resource for computer science students. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
I can help you out. I can help you out. I can help you out.
Alright, now that we're back in Dr. Java, you can see that our program is filled with all this green text. And before I explain what all this means, I want to make one thing really clear. If you really want to learn this, you can't just watch. You have to follow along and do it for yourself. Just like with learning anything else, learning is only 10% watching and 90% actually doing it. So get your hands on it, download the IDE, and practice along with these tutorials. That's why I'm including the source code for this project and for other projects in the future. Source code is just a .java file that contains the original program as written by the programmer. The link to download the source code is in the description below, so before you continue with this video, go download the source code so you can practice with me as I go. Just remember, when you download and save the source code for this project, make sure you save it into the same folder with all the other projects for this course. This is going to keep you organized so you can refer back to these files at any time. Okay, now that you have the file downloaded in your folder, let's open it up and get started. Alright, now back to the green text. Everything you see in green is called a comment. Now the main reason for a comment is to leave notes in the program so that any programmer who looks at this code in the future can read these notes and have a better understanding of the program. And just so you know, a lot of the times the programmer that looks back at the program and needs these comments is going to be you, or rather the person who actually writes the program. So if you're working on a project and you take a break for a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months, when you come back to it, you might not understand everything just by looking at it. However, if we look at our program, we can see pretty much the whole thing is made of comments. So since comments don't affect the program, you can put comments around any part of the program that you want to disable. So that's actually what I've done here. As we progress through the program, I'll enable each part so we can see how each of these parts operates. First, let's look at the comments at the top of the program. There are two different ways to create a comment. There are the single line comments, which are created with 2 consecutive forward slashes, as we see here, as well as multi-line comments, which begin with a forward slash followed by an asterisk and end with an asterisk followed by a forward slash, as we see here and here. This opens the comment and closes the comment. These comments above the program are usually meant to give an overview of the program as well as the author's name. Simple enough, right? Now let's see what's lying underneath all these comments. The first comment we come across is this Mr. Strings 0. And if we look at some of these other blocks of code, we can see a Mr. Strings 1, 2, and 3 also. Mr. Strings is the personified version of this string program, and he's actually going to help me explain the basics of strings, but I'm going to introduce him later. First, let's compile and run our program and see what happens. Alright, now as you might imagine, the program runs and nothing appears except for these 2 blank lines. This is because we have 2 lines of code that are running inside the main method, and all I do is print blank lines here and here. So we're going to leave that comment here for Mr. Strings, but we're going to remove this one. And you should be really familiar with this line at this point. This is just the line that prints hello world. So now if we compile and run this program, we should see the statement hello world. But we end up with this error. So let's look at this and figure out what the problem is. The compiler returns this message. One error found, string.java, line 25. Error, semicolon expected. This tells us that a semicolon is expected somewhere on line 25, this line here. Now let's add a semicolon and compile this again and see what happens. Of course, it runs. Each of these 3 lines are statements, and at the end of every statement, you need a semicolon. Otherwise, you're going to get an error just like we had there. I'll explain a little later what a statement is, but for now, let's move on. Let's delete the closing and opening comments here, and let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so it looks like we're getting another error. 3 errors actually. Ending parentheses expected, not a statement, semicolon expected, all on line 29 here. So this is why we're getting these errors. If we look at this line, we're trying to have these parentheses appear in the output, but the IDE isn't letting us do that. In fact, it's saying this first double quote to open the string and this second double quote to close the string, and it's expecting to see an ending parenthesis and a semicolon to end the statement. Instead, it sees this and it's like, dude, what? And it just breaks. Fortunately, some genius thought to put this comment here, and it has the solution that we need. Special characters, such as double quotes, need to be preceded with a forward slash. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. Okay, and now it looks like everything's kind of cohesive. Everything is read just like we see in these other strings here. So it looks right. Now let's compile it and see what happens. Okay, we don't get any errors. And let's run it. Okay. Now let's free up this next code block, and I'll let my good friend Mr. Strings explain the difference between string literals and string variables.
Hello world. My name is Strings and I'm a program that outputs text. I can even output 2D shapes. Watch this. Pretty cool, right? We'll learn how to make much cooler 2D shapes soon. These kinds of strings are called string literals. A string literal is the text inside a string. Most of the strings you will actually use are string variables. A string variable is a string that is assigned a name and is stored and referenced inside the program. Let's create a new string variable called course name and give it a string value of Java Fundamentals. Tim, why don't you take over from here?
Very well said, Mr. Strings. Up until this point, we've only been printing string literals. Let's declare our first string variable, and then we'll understand the difference between literals and variables. I'll go into much more detail about variables in the next tutorial, but for now, we're only going to look at string variables. The first thing we do when creating a new variable is state the variable type. In this case, it's string. The next thing we do is name the variable. In this case, it's course name. Finally, we have the value for the variable, which is inside these double quotes. Now that the variable is declared, we can use it in a print statement just like we did with string literals. Just below, we have a print statement with a string literal and a print line statement with our string variable. Now let's put these comments back up and compile and run this and see what happens. We get the output, our favorite course is Java Fundamentals, and it's referring to this course obviously. And that's great and all, but it took 2 statements to produce this single line, and that's kind of inefficient. However, there is an easy solution to this problem, and it's called concatenation. Mr. Strings, you're up.
Now, let's learn about concatenation. No. Not that. Not cats. Concatenation. Concatenation is when you combine 2 things together. In this case, we're combining 2 strings. Tim, back to you.
So concatenation has nothing to do with cats and everything to do with joining things together. We already have one string variable named course name. Now let's make a new string variable called favorite course that says our favorite course is. Then we can put the 2 strings together with concatenation. It just so happens that I have this line of code right here. I just need to delete the comment. Now let's combine the strings in the line below. Now if you're calling a variable like we're doing here, you don't put it in quotes like we did when we were creating string literals. And you can see that combining these is as simple as adding a plus sign. Now let's compile and run this and make sure it works. Perfect. Combining the 2 string variables returns a complete statement that says Our favorite course is Java Fundamentals. At this point, we've already covered statements, expressions, operators, and operands, but let me go over their definitions so that we know exactly what they are explicitly. Statement. A statement forms a complete unit of execution. Statements are roughly the equivalent to sentences in a natural language. Expressions. An expression is a construct made up of variables, operators, and method invocations that evaluates to a single value. Operands. The quantity or value on which an operation is being done, and operators are used to perform operations on variables and values. Now, we haven't dealt with arithmetic, comparison, or logical operators yet, but we actually have dealt with assignment operators. In fact, like I said, we've used all of these. So statements we've used in all these print statements and print line statements, and also declaration statements. Expressions usually occur when you're dealing with mathematical equations, but they also happen when we use concatenation because we're adding two string variables together. We're also performing an operation by combining these two, and therefore we're using this operator, this plus sign, and each of these variables is also known as an operand because the function is being performed on them. So down here I go over a few arithmetic, I feel like I'm saying that really funny. I go over a few arithmetic operators: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, which gives you a remainder, increment, which just adds 1, and decrement, which decreases by 1. We also have assignment operators, comparison operators, logical operators. We're not going to go over all these right now, but I just want to include them in this source file so that you have them in your notes to refer to later. Now, I want to explain the reason why I numbered Mr. String's code blocks starting at 0 and not 1, if you remember that. But before I do that, I want to go over to CodingBat real quick. So here we are in CodingBat. This is codingbat.com, and this is the Java portion. You can also study Python. This place just has like a lot of exercises. You can just come here to practice, and that's what I want to do here. I just want to go over a couple practice problems and kind of just solidify everything that we've gone over so far. So let's start with this number 1, hello world. So let's see, given a string name, example Bob, return a greeting in the form of hello Bob with the exclamation point. So and something we haven't done before is used other methods. So this isn't the main method, this is just like a different method. And when you come out of a method, you need to use this return character. So we're not going to use a print statement, we're going to use return here. And we're going to use a string literal to type out hello with a space. We're going to use concatenation, and we're going to call this string variable. So all we're going to do here is type name. We're going to use concatenation again, add an exclamation point in this string literal. We don't need this space here, and we can't forget our semicolon. Now let's go ahead and run this, and it looks like it checks out on every single test that it runs. It's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and try another program and see how it works. Okay, now this is a different exercise. Given two strings, A and B, return the result of putting them together in the order A, B, B, A. For example, if we have hi and bye, hi will be A, bye will be B, and we'll get hi, bye, bye, hi. These are just a couple more examples here. So again, we're going to use our return statement. Some parentheses, parentheses, double quotes. No, we don't need double quotes this time. All we need are these string values here that are going to represent these string variables. So it's perfect. It wants us to return them in the order of A, B, B, A. So all we have to do is type out A plus B plus B plus A semicolon, and it checks out on all the tests. Now let's go ahead and try another one. The web is built with HTML strings like this one here, which draws yay as italic text. In this example, the I tag makes this opening tag and this closing tag, which surround the word yay. given tag, and word strings create the HTML string and tags around the word. For example, this one here again. So, given like these two strings here, one of them is going to be the tag. For instance, these I here, and this site is going to be the tag. This is going to be the word in the center, and then I need to make a closing tag. Alright, so let's start with return, parentheses, and let's make a string literal to open up this opening tag. Concatenate it with the tag string, another string literal to close it, and let's add the word here, and let's add some more closing tags. We're just going to copy and paste this here. That's going to make our lives a lot easier. But there is something we have to do. We have to add this / because this this closing tag has a /. Okay. Semicolon, and let's give this a run. And it passes all tests. Okay, cool. Alright, this video is getting pretty long, so I'm just going to stop it here. But before you go, please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to keep uploading until we get to object-oriented programming, and there's going to be a lot of fun projects coming up, so you don't want to miss out on that. Also, I do want to apologize. I never explained why Mr. String started counting at 0 instead of 1. You might already know why, and if you don't, feel free to just look it up for yourself. However, I promise that'll be the first thing I cover in the next video. Until then, remember to practice with CodingBat and check out compscicentral.com for the answers to all the questions you have learning Java and for all your other computer science classes. Take care.
I can help you out. I can